yes, here we are. Guess what we're reading today? What do you think we're reading today? With this hair, we are reading I Am George. No, not yet. Save it. We are reading the man himself, the greatest American hero of all time, George Washington. No, not yet. Save the prop. Wait, we are reading George Washington. I got the hair for it. Welcome to Storytime with Brad. This is the historically accurate story time. You are going to love this book because we are doing it with Mount Vernon. It is true, Mount Vernon is here. We are recording from Mount Vernon, actually not from Mount Vernon, but with and in tandem with Mount Vernon. So thank you, Mount Vernon, for doing this with us today. And I want you to know they let me sleep at Mount Vernon. I'm not making that up. Last year, I did a talk there at Mount Vernon for the First Conspiracy. And you know what? They let me sleep there. And when you sleep there, they told me that if I survived the night, I own it. So now I own Mount Vernon. That part's not true, but they did let me sleep there. I absolutely slept in Mount Vernon, and they let me wear all George Washington's clothes and a little buckled shoe. They don't let me do that either. I did put his teeth in my mouth. It's gross. I didn't do that either. But I did sleep in Mount Vernon. My wife and I got to sleep at Mount Vernon, which was spectacular. So go to Mount Vernon when it opens, and I want you to know there's a link you'll see for buying I Am George Washington on this one. And the money goes right now, in the middle of all the virus and everything going on, the money goes, in all seriousness, to help Mount Vernon employees. So please click the link and support them there. We love them at Mount Vernon. Thank you for letting us do this. Without any further ado, this is it. Story time. Favorite author, Brad Meltzer. And as always, drawn by the best man in the world, Chris Eliopoulos, our amazing artist. And he will tell you that I made him redraw George Washington's hair so many times on this book because I had to get it perfect like mine. Pow. Okay, here we go. I Am George Washington. And we are opened up. I Am George Washington, set Mount Vernon. This is the place. It's the real place. You cannot. That's where I slept, right? No, maybe this, but no, it was actually in a different one, but you'll see it. You know what one of the hardest things in life is? Being the first. When you're the first to try something new, there's no one to show you the way. But when I was little, I wasn't the first. I was the fourth of 9 children. That's a lot of brothers and sisters. When I was really little, I lived at a place called Mount Vernon, which had a huge river running through the backyard and unexplored forests in every direction. At 5 years old, this was the world I knew. If you wanted to explore the forest, you had to be the first one to go inside. Think you're brave enough to go in there, George? Not yet, but I will be. People will tell you that I was a perfect boy. They'll tell you I didn't tell a lie after I chopped down a cherry tree, but that cherry tree story isn't true. Like most boys back then, I liked swimming, fishing, and riding horses. I was a decent athlete, but nothing spectacular. Mostly, I was an ordinary kid. Remember that, George Washington, ordinary kid. I liked books and even liked to dance. I was great at it. He loved to dance. In school, my best subject was math. I was pretty good at writing, but I was always a terrible speller. Misspelled beginning. Harvest just misspelled wrong. He says, don't you realize I'm going to be one of the world's best leaders? I believe that almost as much as I believe that you're a great dancer. But he was. But remember, when I said that it's hard to be the first, it's easier when there's someone showing you how it's done. This is my brother, Lawrence. He was 14 years older than me. No one had a bigger impact on my life. What are you wearing? My military uniform so I can fight for our country. You like it? It's amazing. I loved hearing the stories of his adventures. Thanks to my brother, I knew I wanted to serve in the military. Soon, though, I saw how uncertain life could be. When I was 11, my dad died. We couldn't afford proper schooling, so my brothers had to teach me at home. I didn't go to high school or college, but I was committed to learning and building myself. You spelled it wrong, then I'll do it again. As a boy, I copied all the rules from a book of virtues. There were 110 in all. Number 11, don't gnaw your nails. Don't bite your nails. Number 12, don't stand too close to people when you're talking or you'll spit on them. That's still good advice today. Number 100, don't use a fork or a knife to clean your teeth. Instead, use a toothpick. The most important was the first one. Every action done in company ought to be done with some sign of respect. I guess that covers spitting on people too. When I turned 15, my mother told me I needed to get a job. Since I was good at math and precision, I became a surveyor, someone who explores large areas of land to find their boundaries. At 16, I went with a wealthy family called the Fairfaxes to survey the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Shenandoah Valley. There were no roads. The rain was fierce. And one night, the straw mat I was sleeping on caught fire. The next night was even harder, but we kept going. Don't give up. There was something special in treading a new path. something beautiful in doing what no one had ever done before. I love this picture when Chris drew it. Just being around the Fairfaxes changed my life. They helped me get work. I observed how they lived, how they dressed, and how they ate. I even learned how to properly dance. He really likes to dance. That wasn't a joke. I was a great dancer. At the Fairfaxes, I ate with fine silver and beautiful china. At home, I ate with sticks at a fire. It was as if I was living in two worlds, but to me, both were equally important. You know you can eat with the rich folks every night. Yes, I know. When I got older, I joined the military. In my first big battle, I was on the British side, fighting against the French and Native Americans. I was shot nearly 4 times. Pew, pew, pew! That's a sound effect, by the way. 4 musket balls ripped through my clothing, but nothing could stop me. While others were screaming, I raced across the battlefield, keeping people calm. We lost the battle, but I became the commander of all of Virginia's fighting forces. At the age of 23, I ran for office to be a member of the House of the Virginia Legislature. I lost. That's right, I lost. Next time I'll be better organized. It didn't stop me. I tried again, and this time, I won. In fact, I won re-election every time after that, but the world as I knew it was about to change. Remember when I was growing up, the United States didn't exist yet. Back then, there were no states, just colonies, all of them controlled by England. We were ruled by the British king named King George. The king's unfair. He wants us to pay for everyday things like stamps and tea. We deserve to be free. In April 1775, the first shots were fired in Massachusetts. You know this one. In Lexington and Concord. It took 8 days for the news of this American Revolution to reach me. Are we going to let the colonists in Massachusetts fight alone? Or are we going to join them? It was one of the biggest questions in history. The answer came in a meeting called the Second Continental Congress. Our 13 colonies decided we would fight together against King George III. All we needed was a leader for the battle. Guess who they chose? You look like you're in charge. Some say it was because I was a natural leader. Some say it was simply because I was taller than everyone else. But let me tell you a secret. I was the only one wearing a military uniform. It wasn't an accident. On that day, I came ready to lead, ready to do the job, ready to be the first. Was it easy to be in power? Never. Our side didn't have enough food, clothing, or weapons. Their side was well-fed and well-armed. Our side didn't have trained soldiers. We were farmers and fishermen. Their side was the greatest fighting force in the world. In the winter at Valley Forge, some of our troops didn't eat for days. They wore rags and had to go barefoot in the snow. So how did we win? We were smarter. We wrote plans in invisible ink so the British couldn't read them. Isn't that cool? Invisible ink! My code name was 7-11. We were sneakier. We launched surprise raids like this one as we crossed the Delaware River. What is this? What? This is not how we crossed the Delaware. This is from Cars. It's that character from Cars. No, we got this right. Come on, you know, everyone thinks he like stood on the famous painting. That famous painting isn't famous. That's not right at all. We got the boat right. We want to get that boat exactly right. I'm going to get this boat. I'm going to show you the exact real boat. Here it comes. The exact real boat that they used. This is not the real. This is another thing from Cars. It's like an aircraft carrier. This is my kid's toy. This is not what. Look, this is what it looks like. This is the real thing. Most important, we wouldn't give in. They were fighting for a king. We were fighting for a cause, for freedom. And this is what it really looked like. We had Chris research it and make sure it looked real. Also, let's not forget, we had a weapon they'd never had. We had General George Washington. After we beat the British Army, a new government was formed. I presided over the convention that wrote our Constitution, which created the new laws for our country. The brand new United States of America was free to explore its own future. Now all we needed was to pick our first president. Someone brave, someone strong, someone trustworthy enough to handle all that power. Again, guess who they chose? You know, you're so popular, you could have made yourself king of America. Yes, I know, and that's why I love him, right? He could have been king, walked away. At the end of the American Revolution, King George III asked someone what George Washington planned to do after the war. The king was told that George was going to return to his farm. If he does that, King George says, he will be the greatest man in the world. And that's exactly what he did. And he did it again when he left the presidency after his second term. Some say it was my most heroic act. I just said that. Instead of putting myself first, I put my faith in my country. I put my faith in you. Here's the part I love, right? Here we go. In life, there are many ways to lead. You can be a quiet leader, a tough leader, a bold leader. But leadership isn't about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. Let me say it again. Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge. When you're in a position of power, always look out for those who put their faith in you. And always forge your own road. Because sometimes the most important trail is the one no one has ever taken before. When you do those things, you will clear a path that will lead the way for others. Now look at this. This is true. Every year we still, of course, celebrate his birthday. President's Day is a national holiday. He's the only state named after a president. And let me tell you, this is the secret of the hair. I'm going to tell you this is true. People think he wore a wig, but he never did. He powdered his hair white, which was the style back then. I want you to know, I'm going to tell you, I promise you this is true. That's what I do. That's my secret. I powder my hair white. I do. My wife is laughing at that joke. She's actually laughing. That's just sad. It's sad. But I'm telling you, boys and girls, find someone who laughs at your bad jokes, and that is who you marry. Just find that person. They will laugh. I just like that he wore fake teeth. That's in there too. They weren't made of wood, though. They were made of ivory. Gross, right? Fake teeth. Leadership doesn't come from charisma or personality. It comes from courage. The courage to do what's right. The courage to serve others. The courage to go first. I am George Washington. Today they call me the father of our country. I have the courage to do what no one's done before. Bum, bum, bum. Ba, 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 ba. George Washington! That's his theme song, by the way. This is actually George Washington's real shield. You can also see it in Mount Vernon. And all of this is historically accurate. Actually, the book is. The shield is not. But we celebrate George Washington. This is actually Captain America's real shield. It's really heavy. And that's it. That is I Am George Washington by myself, by Chris Eliopoulos. What I love to do now is make sure we answer some of your questions. You can ask them somehow below by typing in. It says, David Fraley wants to know, is this based on a true story? Is this based on a true story? It's the story of George Washington. That is the true story. Every fact in this book, it's real. It's real. The shield was not. That was for comedy. But yes, this is absolutely a true story. One of the greatest stories we ever have. It's a story not just of George Washington. It's a story of our country. Right? George Washington's arguably the most famous American who ever lived. We know so little about him as a person. But now you get to know things, right? You know he liked to dance, which I know you're not going to forget. You know about his teeth, about his hair. And you know that he lost. That's the most important thing in here, right? He lost, which I love. I love the fact that, he's not come out perfect. Okay, let's see. Jessica's question. Oh, it's from Sophia 10. Jessica writing for us. Sophia, this is a great question. How long does it take to write these books? It takes me, we take about a month of research. It takes weeks of writing. And Chris takes probably at least a month or more to draw it. And then he has to probably another 2 weeks when he has to redraw all the things that I asked him to make look better. So we have all these versions of George Washington with different hair that I made him draw like 15 times. So that always takes long. So Sophia, great question. I thank you for asking that one. Angie, who I know, love, how many times have you been to Mount Vernon? Oh, that's a good question. So I went to Mount Vernon when I used to live in DC. That's where I bought the hair. And then I think I've been 3 times total. I went with my parents, and then Mount Vernon let me sleep there. And anytime they let you sleep in Mount Vernon, go to sleep in Mount Vernon. It's the best ever. Because you know what happens? They let you wear all George Washington's clothes. You get all of his stuff. No, you don't. You don't. What you do, though, is you get to sleep in Mount Vernon. That's really cool. Drew asked, where can we get a shirt? Oh, the shirt. Thank you, Caden. That's a good question. So this, what's so funny is we started doing these books, obviously, to give our kids better heroes. We always talk about better heroes. But the first thing we made before we made books is I made these shirts for my kids. That's why it's also so tight, by the way. And this was Chris's first drawing. It's actually perfect. When I first asked him to draw George Washington, this is how he drew him. And you can look at it like it's obviously, I know my manly chest is distracting you all right now, but you can see the difference in kind of how much better the drawing got as we went. And this was kind of the early version. But you can go to bradmeltzer.com. The shirts are there. I know Lincoln's there. I know Amelia Earhart's there. I don't even know if George Washington's there. But if not, you inspire me, Kate, and I'm going to have to try and get one up there. Okay, let's see. Next question. Heather says, can you tell us who you'll be writing about next? Okay, so thanks, Heather. Leonardo da Vinci came out last week. So Leonardo da Vinci, Ben Franklin comes in September. And with Ben Franklin, arguably our most important book. We're doing Anne Frank. Very important book right now. We really want to do Anne Frank. We felt like just the way the world is right now, and Anne is an amazing, amazing story. I think you're going to really like that one. So that comes with Ben Franklin. Those both come out in September. And then we're doing in hardcover for your parents watching this, in 10 days, we're doing a book about Abraham Lincoln, about the secret plot to kill Abraham Lincoln. Not the plot that killed him, but the one that got foiled by a secret society. Oh, look at this. My wife just handed it to me. Dun, 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 product placement. The Lincoln Conspiracy, 10 days. So that's the other presidential book that's coming. I think totally appropriate for 4-year-old to like 6-year-olds. No, it's for adults. Okay, one last question. What's my favorite? Oh, Mount Vernon. Oh, Mount Vernon's asking this. What's my favorite story about George Washington? Oh, okay, so this is a good one. My favorite story about George Washington, first, I love he can dance. I love that he loses his election. But my favorite story about him is the fact that when he was president, he was so popular. When we won the Revolutionary War, he was so beloved at the time that he could have been the king. They would have been like, you're the king, be the king. We like kings, we're used to kings. And they could have done that. That would have been a really easy thing to do. But instead he was like, you know what? I'm not going to do it. And that's why we really highlighted that part in here, is to remind your kids, right? We celebrate right now people who go on social media and say, look at me, look at me, look at me. Remember when humility was a great American value? We need to bring that back again. And if we don't, we're doing it wrong. And this is a little bit of what humility looks like, right? Someone who doesn't need it for their own power, but who gives up that power, walks away from it. Could have been president a third term, says, I don't need it, right? Has faith in us, as it says in the book, and faith in our country. That's my favorite George Washington story. Now, with that said, I'm going to sign off. I want to thank you for joining us on the live stream. Thank you to Mount Vernon, who is so amazing. They are so good. Again, if you are watching, if you click the link to buy the book at Mount Vernon, the money goes to help the employees at Mount Vernon. And right now, the employees need help. We know so many people in the country need help. But go click the link. Support Mount Vernon. Thank you for supporting Mount Vernon, supporting myself, supporting Storytime. We will see you next week at Storytime. Same Brad time, same Brad channel. Thanks so much.
Hey there, campers. I'm Chris Eliopoulos. I am the illustrator of the Ordinary People Change the World series, as well as co-creator of Xavier Riddle and the Secret Museum on PBS Kids, along with my good friend Brad Meltzer. So today I want to talk to you guys about a man named George Washington. So we all know George Washington was the father of our country, but he was also just a person, just like you and me. When he was a little kid, he just loved to play games. He liked to ride horses. How cool is that? I wish I could ride a horse. He loved to dance. I am not much of a dancer, but he used to like to cut a rug, as they used to say. And when he grew up, he joined the army and he stood up and defended the country. And then there was a Revolutionary War, the war to decide our independence. Were we going to be a part of England or were we going to be our own country? And they named George Washington as the general in charge of the war. And when we won it, everybody thought they were going to name him king for life. George Washington was so loved at that point, he could have been king. He could have done anything he wanted at that point. But he decided that he was going to step back and go home to his home. And then a few years later, they formed the country and they decided they wanted to name George Washington President of the United States. So George Washington was the first President of the United States. He served 2 terms, so it was 8 years total, and then he decided to once again step away from power. That was the big thing with George Washington. One, that he stepped away from power, that he didn't try to be a big shot and try to hang out for too long and tell everybody what to do. The second is, he was a great leader. Well, what makes him a great leader? Well, a leader isn't somebody that's just in power and in charge and tells everybody what to do. A person who's a leader, a real, truly caring leader, is somebody that looks out for everybody, even the people that don't particularly like them. That is the sign of a true leader. So George Washington had all of the skills to be a leader, and that's why he's remembered to this day as the father of our country. So here we go. One more lesson today. We're going to draw George Washington. All right, so we're going to start off with something very simple. We're going to do a straight line across your page. All right. Next up, we're going to draw, it's like an M shape. If you remember Albert Einstein, we're going to go up and down and up and down. All right. And then we're going to draw a little half circle up here. Boop. And then what we're going to draw is a little circle right here and like a little flower. So I'm going to draw like a little bunch of U shape. Whoop, whoop. And then we're going to do another little line. It's going to start down here, going to come up, behind, up, and over onto this side. And then we're going to draw two little rectangles. Whoop, whoop, right there. That is what is called a tri-corner hat. That's what the hats they used to wear at the time. Next up, we're going to draw, it's like almost a big giant J shape. We're going to go, it's a big J. So back in those days, he had some crazy little curly hair. So we're going to draw some wavy curly hair that kind of goes up, whoop, 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 and then back up again a little bit. All right, that's one side. Then we're going to draw more wavy lines till we come back on this side. All right, now we're going to try and do that on the other side. So we're going to come down and wave, 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 wave. And then we're going to get a little bit of wave just like this side. We're going to come back up. Ooh. All right, it's time for George's nose. His nose, he had a schnoz, he had a honker, he had a big looking nose there, so much like me. So we're going to give him a big nose right in the middle of his face. We're going to start with like a little arch shape and a straight line. That's his big honker, big nose. And then we're going to give him a couple of eyes, like we said, little dots. And then we're going to give him a couple of eyebrows. Now we're going to give him a big smile, but we're going to keep his mouth shut. He used to keep his mouth shut because he kind of lost all his teeth because he didn't brush his teeth. So kids, don't be like George Washington, but brush your teeth, okay? He used to have like these crazy cobble of like animal teeth and people teeth all ground up into his mouth. Gross. So let's give him a big smile without opening his mouth. All right. Now he used to wear like this little fluffy collar thing, so we're going to give him a little wavy thing down here like that. Let's give him a couple little shoulders. Maybe give him a couple of lapels or little zigzag shapes. And finally, put your name on there. Let people know who drew this. Draw your picture. And I want you guys to just remember to be like George Washington and know if you ever want to be a leader is somebody that looks out for others, not for themselves. So keep reading. Next time, maybe look up some facts about George Washington and go look up his wooden teeth. They call it wooden teeth, but they were all this other stuff. So go look up the ugly, gross teeth and let me know what you think. As always, love you. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.